Hey guys, what's going on? This is Pants Our Dragon, and today we'll be doing a little video on up and coming changes coming to patch 6.9 on the items, which is the mid-season mage update, and Riot has made a little forum post where they're just giving some context before these items hit the PvE. And there's going to be 3 new items with this update, and these 3 items are called the Hextech Rocket Belt, the Hextech GLP-07A, and a new AP item called the Lost Chapter. Although these are the temporary names given at the time, these are some interesting changes and I just want to go over some of the things with you guys. And so, with all that being said, let's get started. Alright, so the first item we're going to be talking about is the Catalyst of Aeons, which is just a catalyst, but what this item does is it no longer gives you hit point and mana on level up. Instead, when you take damage from champions, you gain mana, and when you use mana, you gain health. But you can see there's a limit, so let's say your Kog'Maw or Kassadin, you can't use your Rift Walk at 1000 mana and gain 150 hit point back. The mana limit is actually 168, and to be honest, I actually feel like it's a big nerf to the Catalyst, at least for the early game. But when it comes to the late game, it's going to be a really good buff since you're level 18 and you can't level up anymore to get the passive. So you can just use some mana and you gain some hit point. But it definitely is a big nerf to the item itself. And the passive doesn't actually carry on to the Rod of Ages, but it does carry on to the new Hextech item, which we will get into later in this video. Champions I can see having good synergy with it would be Anivia, Swain, Aurelion Sol, and Karthus, just because they all have toggle abilities, so they'll be restoring a lot of hit point per second. Next up is going to be the Tear of the Goddess. Instead of giving mana regen, it now refunds 25% of the mana spent, and the passive carries on to Mana Immune and Archangel Staff. And what this means in simpler terms is, say you use an ability that costs 100 mana, well now it costs 75 mana. That actually seems like a really big buff. Like 25 mana regen versus this new passive. You're probably going to be like, fuck Rod of Ages, I'm getting this item. And you're definitely going to see it on champions like Kassadin, champions who are very mana intensive. Because right now, this item is kind of lackluster and not a lot of champions buy it. They definitely prefer something like Rod of Ages. Or your siege type of champions like Xerath, Ezreal, people who have poke and don't want to rely too much on blue buff. But yeah, it definitely seems like a really strong item when patch 6.9 comes out. And the next item we're going to be talking about is the Chalice of Harmony. So only the passive is getting remade. It still gives base mana regen and magic resist, but now basically when your health is lower than your mana, you'll start restoring health and vice versa. So this passive is kinda cool. I don't know how much I value health regen, but I feel like this item might be a little nerfed since it doesn't have the restore 2% of missing mana every 5 seconds, which is probably going to be worse mana regen than the 100% you see here. Maybe on certain champions it's better, but I'm going to put this item as not a buff or nerf and see how it pans out when it comes out live. Next up, we're going to be talking about a new item that kind of looks like the old Sheen, but with a new passive, where you level up and you restore 20% of your maximum mana. Kind of like the Catalyst, but more instant, I think. So it does look like a landing item for sure, and it only costs 115 gold to combine, and what you're paying for is the passive. Luckily, this item builds into Morellonomicon, so it's not really a waste of money, and that's actually the next item we're going to be talking about is the Morellonomicon. So this item gets a recipe change. It's also 300 gold cheaper. Oh, that's nice, but it doesn't get the passive from Lost Chapter, I think. And it also preserves its Grievous Wounds passive. But it's kind of weird to see, no more mana regen on it. Now you have to rely on the 400 mana coming from it. And it kind of seems a little risky, but it is 300 gold cheaper. And I'm gonna stay neutral on this one too. I mean, let's say you get blue buff or something, then it probably doesn't matter. And it's actually better because blue buff gives you mana regen based on how much mana you have. So I'm gonna stay neutral because I feel like it's gonna be better in some cases, and in other cases it's gonna be worse. And when this patch does come out, they're actually removing the Will of Ancients, but they will also be doing a rework on Vladimir, and he was basically the only champion that would use this item. So yeah, you Vladimir players, don't worry too much. Next up, we're going to be talking about Athene's and Holy Grail, and now as you can see the recipe has changed a bit. Cost is going down by 600 gold, ability power is going down by 20, mana regen is going down by 25%, the mana passive on kill or assist has been removed, but it looks like they're turning this into a support item, as 15% of pre-mitigation damage dealt to champions are now stored as blood charges, up to a certain amount, and when you use a heal or shield on an ally, that is not yourself, you heal that ally. So it's going to be really good on someone like Orianna. Lulu is going to be a little bit more broken, but I don't think it's going to be good on someone like Janna or Soraka because they don't really do too much damage. So you want it on champions who deal quite a bit of damage in teamfights and can also heal or shield allies. I'd say this item got a buff, but it's a totally different item and I can't really compare it to the old Athene's and Holy Grail. Next up, we're going to be talking about the Hextech revolver, and ooh, this is becoming more of a gun. So they're lowering the total cost of this item by 100, but they removed the spell vent passive, but now they added a new passive, where your basic attacks deal 75 to 150 magic damage based on your level, I think. And there's going to be a 30-second cooldown before reactivating again. So this item is going to be pretty interesting. I can see it being built on champions like Victor or people who have that like Sheen proc, but I'm not going to get too into it because we got to see what this revolver now builds into, you know, the new items, and seeing like what they do. But first, we got to talk about the Hextech Gunblade. This is getting a little change. The restore 15% of your damage dealt is still there. The only thing that's changed is the active damage, so it's like Dagon from Dota 2. But the AP ratio is lower by 0.1, which is not a big deal. And now it's instant instead of being a missile. And finally, this cooldown is shared with other Hextech items, so you can't use their unique passive or active and use it all at once. So if you're thinking about buying all 4 items and just being like, you know, this guy with a bunch of Hextech crap, you can't do that because Riot doesn't want to make a Hextech meta. But Hextech Gunblade, it seems like it's getting a pretty good buff. Definitely Akali players are going to be really happy about this buff. And finally, you're all probably waiting for this, but we'll be talking about the Hextech Rocket Belt. And it actually doesn't build a Balmy Cinder, it's actually a Kindle Gem. It's just a 4 impost, so don't get too confused, but it does cost 2,750 gold. Health gives 300, ability power gives 80, and 10% cooldown reduction. Now if we look at the active, what the hell is this? This is like a new mechanic they're adding, kind of like that Mirage Blade from that pirate game mode, but now you dash in a direction only 300 units, and once you land you deal 100 to 250 damage, you know, probably based on your level, and plus 25% of your AP, and it is AoE, but each additional fireball only does 15% damage to the enemy who was hit before. And also the dash cannot go over walls, so you're not going to be like, hey, there's a wall, I'll get away from you. But the active is actually super useful because you can kite away from enemies if you need to. 300 range is good enough to be an extra gap closer, so it's like an additional mini flash, while also doing damage on arrival. And it's got a fairly low cooldown, so I actually think this item might be broken on release, because it seems like it could have potential synergy with a lot of champions, and it's not actually that far away from Flash's range. Flash's range is actually 425, so actually looking that up right now, this item is going to be super broken, and it's going to be good with champions who scale with ability power and want an extra bit of health and cooldown reduction. Think of Fizz or Twisted Fate with this item. Oh, you flashed away? Well, good thing I got this rocket dash to counter your flash, and I still have my flash up. Or say you try and gap close everything on a Twisted Fate who's kiting you. Oh, well, he just dashes away, and now you're not in range if, say, you're someone like Tryndamere or Jax. So yeah, this item actually looks pretty broken to me. I mean, there's a reason Blink Dagger costs like a bunch of gold in Dota 2. So I mean, it is like half a range of a Blink Dagger, but you're also getting a bunch of stats with it. Now next up, we're going to be talking about the Hextech GLP-07A. Oh, that sounds pretty high tech if you ask me. But you can see here, it builds all the Catalyst and Hextech Revolver, plus 750 gold, and you get Rod of Ages stats, but you get the Catalyst passive, and now it has an active where you throw an arc of 5 piercing icy bolts that explode to deal 100 to 200 damage, plus 20% of your ability power, and enemies who are hit are slowed by 60%, which decays over 0.5 seconds. Wait, so this only slows for 0.5 seconds? What? That sounds complete garbage. I mean, I guess you do get the passive, but think how long Blitzcrank's silence from his ultimate lasts. Not that long. Not that long at all. To me, this item doesn't seem that good. I'd maybe prefer the other item for sure. But what they're saying the active should be used for is to slow the enemy so they can hit their hard skill shots. So in that case, I guess you can see it'd be good on champions like maybe Nidalee. Definitely a champion like Xerath or Lux will find this useful. So you know, those skill shots that are very crucial for someone's kit may find great use with this item. But fuck this item, I'm actually looking more forward to the Rocket Dash item, the broken item. They'll honestly make probably a new meta of champions in the mid lane and top lane. Oh yeah, and jungle. Oh but wait. What's the point of getting this item if I can just get Riley's Crystal Scepter? Oh shit! This item compared to that item, kinda shitty. Unless you need the mana, you're like, I'll probably get this item. But wait, you can also get Rod of Ages, which is also getting changed in patch 6.9. As you can see, it's cheaper by 500 gold, but AP is down by 20, mana goes down by 100, and instead of getting 400 mana at max stacks, you'll only be getting 100 mana. So you're losing quite a bit of mana. But you have to remember you have the Catalyst of Aeon's passive, so you essentially still have the mana pool right there. But maybe that might not be enough and you need like a tier or something. Who knows, but I'll say that this item is going to be neutral. Since it is cheaper, you can get the stacks quicker. but you are losing the old Catalyst passive in exchange for a new Catalyst passive. But yeah, it's still probably going to be good. But now let's talk about an item that got nerfed in the preseason, but now is apparently getting a buff. So it's 500 gold cheaper, 30 AP less, that's fine. But now it gives cooldown reduction and builds out of Fiendish Codex instead of a needlessly large rod. And now the cooldown on the active is lowered to 90 seconds. Ooh. So that means champions who like Zonias a lot will be getting a buff indirectly, and you'll probably see Zonia champions coming back into the meta. Like, I mean, it's still a good item to buy right now, but this buff just gives those champions more incentive to be played. So yeah, pretty good buff on this item. Next up, we're going to be talking about Zonia's counterpart, which is the Abyssal Scepter, and it also gives cooldown reduction. But this item is actually getting a pretty big nerf. Total gold cost is going up by 400 gold. AP is going down by 10, but you get more magic resist. And now you also get cooldown reduction. That's alright, but now your aura no longer affects minions, so it's going to be harder to wave clear, and now the aura scales with level. So I'm guessing your mid-game power spike when you get this item is not going to be as powerful. But I mean, for the stats it gave when it was 2,350 gold, I actually deemed it as a really OP item. And it was a must get if you were against a bunch of magic damage. As a mage, of course. Next up is going to be the Spectre's Cowl. So this is getting a nerf, because you can't buy it sooner. And next up is going to be Banshee's Veil. Ooh, cheaper. Wait. Oh yeah, that's actually a pretty good buff. I mean, you can get it quicker, so that's a good thing. You do lose a little bit of stats. Like a ruby crystal costs 450 gold, and it only gives you 150 health, so you're losing like 50 health of stats. Not a big deal if you can get this quicker. And finally, the last item of this patch is going to be the Spirit Visage. So combined cost is going to be lower, that's good. 15 less MR, but more health regen, and the passive healing is going up by 5%. I think it's better, and it is a buff. It's really hard to say because there's like a lot of complicated math with certain champions, but let's say if a Soraka in your team or someone who heals, then 5% is definitely going to help. And if your champion has high base regen, then yeah, it's going to help. But 15 magic resist is also worth quite a bit. Let's just say it's a slight buff. And finally, we are done this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the ride. I can't wait until the Hextech Rocket Belt comes out, just to see what kind of shit people are going to do with it. And it's definitely going to create some new combos for certain champions who will use that item. And it's definitely going to be very chaotic for a little while. Although that other new item wasn't too exciting, but I mean, new animations, yay, that's pretty cool. Also, here's a disclaimer, these things are subject to change, so if you're seeing this in the future, some things might not be the same. And finally, I want you guys to comment below on what item are you hyped for in patch 69. You already know mine, it's that Hextech Rocket Belt, but I just want to know what yours is. And yeah, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you didn't, make sure to subscribe. Anyways, I am Panzer Dragon, and I'll see you guys next time.
Spin round, might put it on your sister. Got swag like a